Hey, Steve. I'm delighted to be back with you. Another episode of the Value Stream Show. So, today we wanted to talk about differentiating value streams from other things, meaning if you spot a value stream in or something in the wild that you think might be a value stream, how can you tell if it's a value stream or not? So, Steve, what would you say are the characteristics or the different aspects that help us to identify whether something's a value stream or not?
Yeah, I think this is a really valuable aspect of traveling the path of value stream thinking and learning about value streams, because a lot of folks ask, how do I identify a value stream? How do I start to talk about value streams in the context of my team or my business? And I think that is really enabled by having a strong understanding of is what we're dealing with actually a value stream, or um, how do we get a benefit from thinking in terms of value streams when we could be thinking in terms of processes or any other way of thinking about workflow in an organization? So um, the first thing that comes to mind when I think about value streams is a customer, right? Like, and I think that's probably the most valuable part that kind of like fired a light bulb in my head was this idea of connecting the workflow of a sequence of activities to a customer outcome, something that happens for a customer. And a lot of folks will say, okay, well, um, I don't have any connection to a customer. I work on a product team. We have demos, but we only demo internally. We bundle everything up into a release every couple of months, and that goes out to customers, but I don't actually deal with them. And that's pretty common. It's less and less common, I would say, but historically, that's been a challenge. And I think that thinking in terms of a value stream where you start to envision or map out all the activities that happen from when your workflow kind of gets to the limit of your visibility or your impact. And what happens after that before it gets to a customer is really valuable, because it enables you to start to see the big picture and make decisions about how to enable the best flow of work out to that customer. Even if it's beyond your control, you can sort of set things up so that things are going to customers as in the best state possible. But that's definitely the first thing that we think about when we think about a value stream is there a customer at the other end of this? And the contrast to that is if there's not, then you're probably dealing with just a process. You're probably just dealing with a repeated activity or sequence of activities that may or may not have a direct impact on a customer. The really valuable thing about a value stream is that it's impacting customer outcomes, and that's why I think it's so powerful.
So, just repeating that back to you, you obviously it doesn't mean that your specific job is customer facing, and that's where you get a little bit of you can get a narrow perspective sometimes as an individual contributor. You have to look at the whole process that you're working together with the team on and see, is that directly customer facing, um, and that's the first defining characteristic. Okay. So, and if it's not got a customer directly attached to it, then it's probably just a process of some kind. So, fair enough. What would you say is the next characteristic of a value stream?
Yeah, so I mean, there's one clarification I would add to the prior comment, and that's just the idea of an internal customer, right? And a lot of folks will trip over this idea that, okay, well, what I'm doing, let's say, standing up new environments inside the company for product teams to use, or uh, doing something like hiring new candidates or onboarding new hires. Um, there's still a customer to all those activities. And so you can think of all of those activities and those sequences of activities still as a value stream, and you might benefit from thinking of them in terms of a value stream because all the metrics of flow apply. So I would add an asterisk to customer and mention that internal customers are in some cases just as important as external paying customers. And in some cases, external customers are users or they're buyers of a product or service. And you can think about them differently because they experience value in different ways. So in some cases, you've got a buying customer and they're experiencing the outcome of a different value stream than a user of a product or service. But you can still think of a value stream connecting to that customer. So customers being more than just what you might think of as a typical user of a service. Sometimes it's a buyer, sometimes it's an internal stakeholder, sometimes it's a individual contributor inside the organization. But to your question, and to get back to this differentiation and continuing on from where we were talking about a process, like I think that when we're thinking about value streams, of course, we want them to be somewhat consistent. I would say mostly consistent, right? They're highly repeatable sequences of activities because that means we can kind of standardize them, optimize them, improve them. Whereas if they're varying significantly from iteration to iteration, you might just be talking about an initiative inside the company, some kind of one-off sequence of events that might be challenging to think of in terms of sustainable improvement, right? If you're thinking of optimizing an individual effort to achieve some goal, it's a tough sell because maybe you're not going to do it the same way the next time. Maybe it's better to learn from your experience and do things slightly differently. In that case, you're probably not dealing with a value stream. And I think that that's something that a lot of organizations might struggle with at varying levels of maturity or capability. They might not have a lot of repeatability to this sequence of events that they might benefit from thinking of as a value stream. Because, a value stream really kind of relies on a stable, long-lived team to improve it and maintain it over time. Otherwise, it's just going to be sort of treading water.
Mm-hmm. We talked about this a little bit yesterday in a separate meeting where we were saying that for a startup, as like the early universe where everything's still cooling and congealing and planets are forming and so forth. In a startup, people are still just trying to get oriented to their roles and trying to figure out, what they should be building and so forth. And so it's not until you develop a certain degree of repeatability in a set of activities that you can say, okay, well, here we can call this a value stream. It's got enough definition and clarity around the repeatable process that we can then activate the ideas that come along with value streams, such as, let's do some value stream mapping, let's do value stream management, see what we can do to optimize, do things in parallel, reduce waiting time and so forth. So it's comfortable, I think, for me to say that if it's too early in the process, you don't yet have a value stream. It's still too exploratory. But
yeah, and I think that to continue on from that, I don't think you actually benefit in that scenario by striving for a level of stability and consistency and repeatability, because chances are, that would be premature optimization. Like it would be sort of too early to say what the right flow should be. And it's probably beneficial to kind of lean into that uncertainty and discovery and exploration, because chances are you have a lot to learn before you say, okay, this is the way that it, we know works well, and let's continue to improve this. But I think, once you shift gears from kind of innovation to optimization, you're going to start uh, focusing on different things, and you'll have different outcomes depending on what pair of glasses you put on to look at a sequence of activities. So I think that it's really valuable to know what your current mode of operation is. And this goes back to kind of like starting from outcomes. It's like, what is the goal that we're trying to achieve, and how does a value stream model serve us in that context? And I think if you're heavy into discovery in unknown territory, then it might be challenging to try to fit what you're doing into a value stream. One case I'll mention that I see a lot in teams that I work with is they're always struggling to think about what happens most of the time, because in order to kind of measure a common case for a value stream, like how long does this activity take inside the value stream? And if the answer is like not even just it depends, right? In a lot of cases it depends, and that's the answer. But in a lot of cases it's like we have no idea. It's like it's all over the map. Some days it's like 30 minutes, other days it's 3 weeks. And we have no idea how to move the dials and pull the levers to get that more consistent. It might be a little bit too early to start thinking about optimizing a value stream. You're probably better served by kind of standardizing the flow and starting to look at, improving the stability of that operation.
Okay. So any other defining characteristics you'd say that differentiate a value stream from other structures within an organization?
I think,
I guess let me inject one that we talked about previously, which is that a value stream is a relatively linear process over time. There's a lot of different systems and structures within an organization, but a value stream is specifically, a linear process done over time, generally handing off between multiple people. But it's really, I guess, doesn't necessarily have to be always something that's done by multiple people. But that's, I think, where most of the complexity arises, where there's handoffs between folks. So I'd offer that as one differentiator, linear process. Anything else?
I like that one. I mean, definitely linearity helps with definition, right? And measurement. This idea of like striving for some form of stability and consistency. Because the more kind of complex and branching and interconnected the process is, or the sequence of activities, the less it's going to be possible to kind of measure and optimize that, right? Because it just gets into unknown territory. But I also like the emphasis on collaboration, because I think that that's where we see a lot of benefit to this is we struggle with work when it's collaborative. It's very easy to kind of optimize your own sandbox and your own piece of the puzzle in isolation. And what gets tricky is when you've got multiple people handing work back and forth, or onward and onward through different groups of people. So I would say, you definitely benefit from thinking about value streams in collaborative environments.
Yeah, great. Any other points to add in terms of differentiating or defining a value stream?
Well, I think it pays to mention, I don't know if we've mentioned it already in this session, but like why we want to do that, why we want to identify value streams. And I think, it's definitely a very valuable model for thinking about how to improve workflow and what we're actually delivering with value streams. Um, so, what we're thinking about when we're thinking about identifying value streams, it's so that we can start to talk about them productively, and we can share a common model for the way that we're working. So, to kind of bring this home and talk about, why are we identifying value streams? Why is it really important to identify value streams? And it's so that we can have productive conversations, usually beyond the boundaries of a given team, right? I mean, all this stuff is easy. It's easiest when it's just you. It's easy still when it's just one team, but often with value streams, we're talking about multiple teams, multiple activities. And in some cases, these participants are in different modes of operation, different capabilities, practices. They use different language to talk about their work. And so a value stream and using the same kind of model and lexicon and ultimately the same data set to talk about their work as a whole, like the ultimate delivery of value to customer and the flow of work that is delivering that, that gets really powerful, right? When you can all start talking about, okay, well, we have the same understanding of where we start, where we finish, how things go along the way, and where we collectively see the biggest challenges and the biggest opportunities. So I think when we're better able to identify and communicate our understanding of what value stream we're talking about, I think all that gets a lot easier.
Okay, great. So I appreciate the tips and ideas on how to differentiate that value stream. So that's, I think, hopefully helpful for the listeners. So thank you so much.
Hopefully we, let us know if you've got different ideas about how you think about the boundaries and how you think about what they look like and their characteristics. Like we're building out this, almost like principles of value streams. Like how do you know, and how do you communicate this? So I think that hearing from the audience, finding out about other conversations and other work in this space would be awesome.
Fantastic.